Okay, so it's 7:01. We'll call the advisory committee meeting to order and call the roll. Gina Stino.
Present.
Mike Barclay.
Present.
Fran Collins. Yeah. Patrick Kennedy.
Here.
Mark Maggi.
Here.
Excellent. Ellen Marr.
Present.
Mary McGoldrick.
Present.
And Meg Wheeler.
Present.
Okay. So you'll notice that well, maybe you won't notice. I think I emailed everybody and said that we had some changes to the agenda. Representatives of the School Facilities Committee weren't able to join us this evening. The chiefs were good enough to accelerate their appearances, so I see that both of them are here. And so we're going to start we started with departmental budget reviews by talking with the school department at our last meeting. We'll have public safety at this meeting, and then we'll move on to some various smaller things in housekeeping. We do have a representative of the South Shore Regional Vocational Technical School, vocational school, who are going to be in to talk about a warrant article to amend the regional agreement. So I think we've got a full agenda, but the last thing I want to do is discuss the setting up the next few meetings. And before the end of this meeting, I'll circulate to you kind of a document that's our calendar with the mostly open dates and a list of things we need to do, and we can put that together. So starting in no particular order, perhaps by seniority, Chief Quigley. And Mike, I know you're our liaison to both police and fire. So if it's all right with you, I'd like you to maybe walk, kind of take the lead on these two witnesses.
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, I've had the opportunity over the last few months to meet with both the chiefs and review their operating and their capital budgets. And I mean, in my opinion, they're completely reasonable and necessary for the needs. They might not even actually completely address the needs of the two departments, but I mean, I'll turn it over to Chief Quigley because he can obviously take you through the puts and takes of the specifics. But having met with both of them, I think they're definitely necessary.
Thanks, Mike. My inclination was to say thank the chiefs and move on, but I suppose that would be being over reliant on Mike's I'm sure accurate conclusion. So Chief Quigley, take it away. Unmute would be good.
Are you seeing my shared screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So this is a level service funded budget request. I've talked to Mike extensively, along with Jen Mullen and Chris, along with Michelle Leary. These are some of our priorities that are noted in this first slide. There's only 4 or 5 slides here, so I won't torture you. But school safety, traffic safety, and just continuing with the quality of life we have here in Cohasset. Mental health and family violence intervention. It's been a huge issue over the past couple of years, really, since COVID. And I just got the numbers today from our regional dispatch center, the SHREC, and our calls for between 2021, calendar 21 and calendar 22 are up 26.3%, 26.3%. That's huge. It's off the charts this year. We've just been, I don't know what it is, but we've been busy, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. Just for numbers' sake, 2021 we responded to 10,958 calls, and in 22, calendar 22, we're at 13,843 calls. Moving on, this is the department org chart. pretty self-explanatory. It's flat. This is, we've made some promotions over the past couple of months. We're going to be losing several officers to retirement in the coming months and coming year. Some of our senior sergeants are going. We have one that's going probably within about 6 weeks. Sergeant Hunt and Sergeant Trainer has explained that he's ready to go in probably August. We've lost, for all intents and purposes, we've lost our special officer force due to post police officer standards and training police reform. There's no way to effectively, we'd have to train these folks to the level of a full-time officer. So it's not compatible with the reality of our budget to train part-time people, because the reality of it is we'd probably lose them to full-time positions in other towns if we paid to train them to the standard, which is nowadays. So let's talk about the fiscal year 24, the proposed budget. I sort of gave a range of options, 2 options. Option 1 was to add an officer, and that would have increased the budget by 14.9%. Option 2 was not to add an additional officer, and that'd just be an increase of 5.8%. These percentage increases, and just for point of reference, between talking to Chris, Michelle, and Jed, we settled at 6.64% increase. That's going to be the request at this point. So our high was 14.9, our low was 5.8, and we settled at 6.64%. And I think Jen is on board with that. That said, it's all personnel driven. Everything in the operating budget is pretty much level funded, except for a couple things. Ammunition is just skyrocketed with the prices. And as you know, we settled union contracts with both of our police unions in the last 90 days. And we made some real progress with moving the department forward with coming out of civil service. And that's going to free us up and give us some leeway with hiring in the future. So we'll realize some savings there down the road when it comes to training people and hopefully retaining people. One of the other things too, as I mentioned, we're going to be losing a couple of senior sergeants. So theoretically, new people will come in at a lower rate with less fringe benefits, less vacation time, less personal days, and all the things that go with, being there for 33 years. We have our animal control / natural resource officer. He was in the budget last year. He remains in the budget this year. We've been able to use him. He is post certified, so we're using him in a patrol function as well as covering the natural resource duties. So he's actually taken up a lot of slack. And again, he's post certified, so we can use him. He has all the training of a regular police officer. And these are just some of the different things we've been involved in over the past year for calendar 22. There's a lot of training. We've had several high-profile incidents, as everybody knows, and again, it's not getting any slower. Again, we're at 26.3% increase in calls. I see. Mr. Chairman, do you want me to take questions as I'm going? I see Fran has his hand up.
I think a lot of times with members of the committee, questions as we go makes more sense because we don't have to relate all the way back. So Fran, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, Chief, is your natural resources officer, is he shared with Hingham and Norwell, or are we paying him? He's totally on our payroll.
He's shared with the town of Norwell, so we pay 75%, and they're covering 25%. That includes benefits.
So he spends most of his time in Cohasset then.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
With the exception of certain times in the fall. Strangely, or not so strangely, Norwell has a ton of barns, like over 100 barns, and he's responsible for doing the inspections on those. So he really gets tied up in the fall in Norwell, but we have him the vast majority of the time.
Thank you.
And that's sort of all I got. This is just sort of a an overview of what the Natural Resource Officer does. And again, it's a regional solution, and I think we have to, really start looking towards regionalizing services and how we do things. It's the only thing that's going to be sustainable. With that, that's all I got.
Questions? I have a couple. Chief, is there I understand there's an officer assigned to the schools.
There's one there's one school resource officer.
And is that a full-time assignment for one of our officers?
Correct. It's a full-time position, full-time assignment. And we're really looking at grants. It'd be my desire, and I've talked to the leadership at the school to actually have an officer just for the Sawyer Street campus, both schools, the Deer Hill and Osgood, the little kids, if you will, because it's sort of a lot of the SRO's time is spent at the high school. There's just more complex issues going on at that age range, and we'd like to spend more time on Sawyer Street at that campus, but sometimes time just doesn't allow.
And that officer's pay and benefits reside entirely in the police department budget?
No, it's above the line, as they say. So it comes out of a different. Doesn't come out of my budget. Doesn't come out of the school. I think maybe Chris or Jen can speak to this. I mean, it comes out of the town budget, but it's not attributed to my department.
Okay, I should have known that. I saw Jen's hand briefly. Was that a wave or a question or an answer or?
No, I was just going to answer the question. Yes, we do budget it, but we do not budget it in the police budget. If everybody saw a copy of the overview that when I presented the budget to the select board, you'd see a separate line specifically for the resource officer.
Fran, you have a question?
Yeah, I have two questions. One is I saw there's a pretty good expenditure for long guns, and I'm wondering what kind of long guns you're buying. Are they replacements or is this something new? And the other question is, I was speaking to somebody today who had some knowledge of the police department and told me that you were short 6 patrolmen. And I saw something online here recently. There was an award ceremony for your new sergeants and your lieutenants, and what I saw in that was that you were fully complimented. So, which is right?
So the first thing, the long guns, is that the capital budget, the 10-year plan?
Yeah.
Yes, so that's more of a placeholder. We received those weapons through, it's called Project 1033. So it sort of gets put, because things have been so tenuous with the federal government and police reform. We're just trying to be ready if the military comes in and says we want our weapons back. We've changed them all over. We've made them not automatic and things like that. But at the end of the day, they do belong to the federal government. So it's more of a placeholder and it gets pushed back every year. We push it back. So there's no plan on buying new guns. We have those, but on the off chance that the federal government says we want those back, I just want a placeholder.
I get you. All right. I didn't know whether it was, I knew we always had shotguns, but I didn't know if you were talking about the AR-15 type weapons or not. Apparently that's what you were talking about.
Yeah, we do have, we've had them for more than a decade.
Okay, thank you.
They are owned by the federal government.
Yep.
And as far as, we are at full, we're at full staffing. We're paying for full staffing. We have three officers out right now. Let me see, two are on family medical leave. It's months, 5 months each. Another one is out injured with a line of duty injury. So I'm down 3 officers right now, but all positions are filled and we're paying for all positions. Who's coming to work is a different story.
No, well, that's what I had read, and that's what I thought was the story. But someone was telling me that you were down 6 people are short. And I said, something isn't right here. Okay, well, you answer the question. Thanks, Chief.
And just one thing, just, as a point of reference, the way we run Manning. So any absence at all, because we have safe Manning levels, number of officers on per shift, which is usually 3. Any absence requires us to hire overtime. So we have three out now, long-term months, probably 5 months each. By the end of this, we have to cover that in overtime every single day. There's no cushion.
Good, thanks.
Patrick, then Mary.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. You mentioned, I think it was a labor or personnel increase of 6.64. Is that the union increase over 3 years, or is that some other figure you were referring to?
No, that's all in. That's the entire budget is up 6.64%.
The entire budget. Okay, so it's mostly personnel, like 90-something% personnel and labor
Correct.
costs. That's
Correct.
year over year, fiscal 23 to budgeting for fiscal 24.
Correct. And also, one of the things that's driving that number up is regional dispatch. We're a decade in now on regional dispatch, and at the regional center is an end of life. So we're trying to prepare to replace that stuff. So the regional dispatch line item in the operating budget is up 10%. It's usually about 4%, and that 10% it's almost $38,000 or $40,000. So that's a big driver this year.
So each town that's within Shrek is getting the same percentage increase in their contribution year to year?
Chris can answer that, but it's prorated.
So, Patrick, the formula is based both on what we're putting into the budget, but also population and call volume weighted equally. As the chief pointed out, our call volume happened to go up quite a lot this past year, which raised our percentage. So we went up higher by a percentage basis than some of our counterparts. In some years we don't. Yeah. This is an unusual increase, but the annual formula is based on population. We're the smallest town, and we also have the fewest. Well, we don't have the fewest calls anymore, actually.
No.
we used to have the fewest calls.
Norwell is we've bumped Norwell out.
And their population base is larger than ours.
Actually, one of the things that sort of gets missed in all this is through Shrek, we received the regional grant. We're getting over $250,000 in radio infrastructure equipment it used to reside on our 10-year capital plan. So they're actually installing that now. So we've come into, although we're paying $400,000, we just got back almost $60,000 to replace our entire radio infrastructure.
So there's offsets.
Okay, Mary, then Ellen.
Yes, thank you, Chief. 2 quick questions. I just noticed from the approved budget for FY23 and where we were on 12/31, you've gone through a little more than half of it. I'm actually surprised it isn't more, given the amount of stuff that's been going on that's impacted the town. Do you have any sense of where we are in terms of overtime as a result at the midpoint in the year?
We're going to be north of $550,000 in overtime for fiscal year 23.
Okay.
Just if you count the raises alone, due to the new contracts, but my computer died today at work, so I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage. I do have a sheet. It's called the known overtime sheet. So we know that there's so many officers. We know how many vacation days they get. We know how many personal days they get. We have an average of sick time. So we just times that by an average overtime rate. And we know, right from the beginning that, before anybody there's any, emergency or special event, we're at about $450,000 just to cover the known overtime. So anything beyond that, whether it's Memorial Day or, any type of emergency, or investigation or something like that, it's over and above that known overtime number.
Right. And if you were able to add an officer and you went to the 14% increase, what impact would that have on the overtime? And I realize there's a lot of unknowns because, as you said, you don't know who's not going to be able to work for a while, and you have to be staffed, et cetera.
I mean, in order to make a sizable impact on the overtime budget, you probably have to add 4 people. One officer, may save $40,000. We've had different committees over the years, blue ribbon committees and study groups, and I have all the reports from these folks, and it's generally a moving target. It depends. We have different rates based upon what shifts people work, what time something happens. There's higher rates at night and during the overnight, so it's not exactly it's not an exact science when it comes to estimating this, but we can look at the history of the overtime account, and it's been over $500,000 consistently for 3 or 4 years.
I guess the main point I was trying to get at was it seems like adding another officer wouldn't drastically address that issue.
Probably not. I mean, what happens is if you add an officer, from the studies we've done, it reduces the overtime. It potentially reduces the overtime by $70,000, but you're adding it to the full-time salary line items, plus fringe benefits, so it's a wash.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Overtime doesn't need extra medical insurance and things like that. So, Ellen.
Sorry, Mary that was my question about adding officers to offset overtime.
I have I think I passed this around last year, but I have an article from the Cohasset, I think it's the Cohasset Mirror at the time, but 1986, it was Chief Keeley requesting, he's going to need, more than the 17 officers. Manning at the police department has been flat for almost 40 years. We haven't increased. All the town has grown around us, and we've remained relatively steady.
Other questions? Chief, I understand that the collective bargaining agreement settled. It was a three-year contract.
Correct.
And do you recall what the raises are in each of the 3 years? I know they're all pretty much the same across the town departments. I just don't remember what they are.
I think it was 3.5, 3. Chris, does that sound right?
The base for everybody, Rob, was 2.5, 3.
Okay.
That said, there were incentives in the police contract, particularly on the education side, because of their agreement to leave the civil service system. So they were given they have a percentage increase based on various degrees achieved. And that went up, I think was 1% each year or something close to that. It's like a associate's, bachelor's, and master's law. And those went up as well. We did also a one-time step up that just went into effect in January. So they got a step up this January. We changed the steps.
Wage adjustment. It brought us in line with Hingham.
One of the realities is that we're facing is that, we can't match our neighbors on all things, but there are 2 towns, I won't name them, Bill did name one of them, that are pulling ahead, and I don't understand at all, and it's a little further south of us. Hingham is just bigger. They have a large industrial, commercial base, and they have a different need, and their salaries across the board have kind of lapped, but they're also going for a $7.5 million operational override in a couple of months. So we're not looking to do that. At the same time, we do have to remain competitive, and I think we've done that in this country.
Okay. Anyone else? I'm going to have some questions about the scope of these increases and its effect on the overall budget, but I don't think we need to keep the chiefs on the line for that. Those are you and Jennifer questions. So absent anything further for Chief Quigley, we can thank him and move on to Chief Dockeray. Good.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks, Chief. We'll see ya.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, John. How are you?
Great, nice to see everyone. Rob, I'm not across the street. I'm down the fire station, so.
I noticed that. I mean, between you and Dave Singari across the street from me, I'm in the safest house in town.
Let's hope.
Yeah, and I have an RN here too, so it's all good.
Oh, yes, you do. Let's see if I can get that up. Yep. So I'm not as tech savvy as Chief Quigley with the pictures. This is my PowerPoint presentation of my budget. Everyone can see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Thanks, Mel. Thank you all. So again, our operating budget breaks down into 3 categories: salaries, overtime, expenses. Administrative staff, the chief of the department, I have a contract with the town. Assistant chief, who's under the salary classification bylaw. Kind of interesting, the chief's salary is down this year and assistant chief salaries are down. As you know, Chief Sylvia retired. He was at a higher rate than my current salary. So believe it or not, we have decreases in the administrative salary side of the house. That decrease is down, that's $20,000 down from last year's budget. Operational staff, we have 24 positions with the 4 groups, captain, lieutenant, and firefighters. Happy to say that the local and the town came to an agreement over a contract that expires in June of 2025. The last 2 budgets, the budgets were flat because there was no agreement in place. So you'll see a makeup in salaries as we move forward. Again, this is the operational staff with the 4 captains, the 4 lieutenants, and 16 firefighters. And that's how it breaks down the operational staff. And this is total salaries with the department assistant chief. Total numbers with the total administrative salary, operational salary, and the incentives. There's a sick leave buyback and a vacation buyback. My overtime expenses, 14 different categories, from administrative, bereavement, callback, storm coverage, fire prevention, injuries, jury duty, mechanic, military leave. Military leave was kind of big last year. We had 1 member who was activated due to COVID. He is back, but he is telling me that in calendar year 24, he's going to be activated and sent overseas. So that's going to be a big hit to the budget. Next year, it'll be like the second half of calendar 24. And we also have some training involved. The paramedics, like myself, we have to maintain 60 hours of Con Ed every 2 years. It's covered in my salary, but the on-duty staff or line members get overtime to attend that training. Along with, we try to go to the Boston Fire Academy with Hull, Hingham, or Scituate to do some live training. And also through a federal grant, we were able to purchase a pump trailer, again, with Scituate, Norwell, Hingham, and Hull, that we can do some live pump training while members are on duty. The only overcost would that be for overtime cost would be for the 2 trainers to come in and work with the on-duty members to do the pump training. And you can see how the overtime is broken down into hours request. The other thing is the overtime is up another $100,000 compared to last year, and that's because we have new rates because the new collective bargaining agreement is in place. And my expenses, just to make things quick on the expenses, this page here just shows what my increases are compared to last year's expenses. Uniform allowance, we're in the process of hiring new members. We are down 4 members right now due to retirement and due to resignations. So once those members come on board, we have to purchase some uniforms for them. Vehicle maintenance it's tough. It's tough to get parts. And now one of the big things is they're charging freight on all the parts. So that's why we've got an increase in vehicle maintenance. Increase in contract expenses. We have really no storage room here at the firehouse. So we have two Connex boxes in the back of the station. And last budget cycle, the facilities department used to cover the cost for those. Now they've transferred those expenses to us or to my budget. So that's why I have an increase in contracting expenses. Custodian supplies, again, it's up just under $500, but again, we're being charged for freight or delivery charges. Same thing for EMS supplies. That's why you see these increases. It's all about freight or delivery cost. Fire prevention, we're going to move to a electronic code based software program that allows the assistant fire chief, when he's out doing inspections, to go get the codes on his phone instead of trying to come back to the station, research it in the books, and then get back to whether it be the contractor or the homeowner that's questioning why they have to upgrade systems or install certain systems. Let's see. So those are really the big increases. I have a decrease in the capital outlay that I'm asking for. One of the things that we are seeing now in the fire service with these new electric vehicles, I'm lucky to say we haven't experienced one yet, but our neighbors to the north, Norwell, they've experienced one. Other departments in the state have experienced one, these electrical vehicle fires. You need at least 10,000 gallons of water to put these things out, because these lithium ion batteries, once they get in runaway mode, they're extremely difficult to extinguish. They've come out now with a tarp, a special tarp that we can apply over the vehicle to help smother the fire, and then allows us to then attack the battery fire or cool the battery component and not use as much water. So that's probably the only increase you see there for the capital outlay. And so that's really it for the budget request for 24. Any questions for me?
Anybody? Ellen?
Thanks for coming, Chief. How many electrical car fires have we had in Cohasset? I'm just curious.
Luckily we've had not one yet, but there are numerous electrical vehicles here in town, numerous electrical vehicles. So I want to be proactive and so you'll see it's like a $10,000 request, and I want to purchase 3 blankets for each of the 3 engines. And that's the reason why.
Are the blankets single use?
No, multi-use.
Okay.
Multi-use blankets.
Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that the chief, when we were talking about these blankets for the EVs, that not only does it take a lot more water to put the fire out, but then you got to call the hazmat in, because the water that the runoff is hazardous. So the blankets just make sense on a number of fronts.
Yep. No, our neighbors in Norwell had one at the dealership, and they used about 10,000 gallons of water. They initially put the car out, and 2 hours later, because the batteries were still in runaway mode, they went back and spent another hour extinguishing the car fire.
Ellen?
Yeah, if I could just comment on that. I know in Southwest Florida, after Hurricane Ian, they had a lot of EVs that caught fire and the salt water was a trigger. And it got to the point where tow companies wouldn't go and tow EVs out of garages or driveways or wherever, because they were recombusting on, the flatbeds that they were on. And us being on the coast, I think we need to be cognizant of, situations that might happen. I don't think we have any charging stations along the coastline. Do we?
I don't know of anything along the actual coast, Ellen, but I know we have one in the town parking lot, behind the town hall at the at the library, and then people are putting these in their homes now too.
I was going to say anybody's home could be a charging station.
Yeah. Oh, there's a couple of these going in homes, so we just don't know. There's a potential now. There's a potential.
Thank you.
Fran?
Yeah, Chief, are your men receiving any special training for putting out electrical fires? I mean, we're talking about fairly high voltage stuff here. There's a certain hazard to being around and working with this stuff.
So on the vehicle fires, there really isn't no training right now. We do have training if we have to, there's a car accident and we know what cables not to cut and what cables we can cut, because the main cables that carry all the power have candy striping on them. But the vehicle fires, there really isn't much training. We just deal with as a vehicle fire. But if we have an energized fire, like a solar panel field, that we have to wait for the grid to come, make sure the power is shut off, and then we'll tackle that fire. So anything that's energized, we just have to make sure the power has been disconnected to the.
Even on a solar panel fire, there's still, as long as the solar panels are receiving light, they're still generating electricity. So that's a hazard in and of itself. But that's another.
That is true. That's true. And then these blankets we could use to go over the top of those solar panels too, to stop them receiving light.
Excellent idea. Good. Thanks, Chief.
Anyone else? Okay. Thanks very much. We discuss the departmental budgets as part of a broader discussion of the town manager's overall budget, but the key departments we really appreciate you coming in and giving us an overview and then answering our questions. So we appreciate it. And unless there's anything else, I think we're all set.
Great. Thank you. I'll be home shortly, Rob. Keep an eye on you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Rob, I just also throw in that just on the capital side, both of their budgets are really modest. In the police are just, it's just 2 new cruisers on the regular replacement cycle, plus $12,000 for tasers. And then on the fire side, I think the chief is only asking for the equivalent of 3 new sets of firefighting equipment because I
saw that on our list. Yeah.
So their capital requests are very small as well.
Thanks. I should have brought, since they are pretty modest and obviously necessary, I don't feel any particular reason to to have drilled down on those. But thanks for bringing that up. Will they be funded through the capital budget requests, Mike? So we'll see those again. But they're not going to be moving that needle.
They met Monday with the capital committee, and I didn't hear any pushback on the requests from the capital budget committee on their requests. And maybe a little off topic, but there was a nice discussion about facilities too, which we'll potentially hold for another day.
Yeah, thanks. I'll look at that meeting if it comes up online, as they sometimes do. Ellen, I see your hand.
Yes, well, Mike just commented, I didn't know if while we had the chiefs here that there is a request, about a new safety building. And I don't know if there could be a very top level overview on that, or if it's not the appropriate time, that's fine.
Yeah, it's just for a feasibility study. And I think it's just a placeholder at this point. I'm looking at it, the public safety, there's a placeholder for Article 17.
Okay.
That was my impression as well, is that it is something we'll discuss later on with the town manager in terms of what's beginning to be the sketch outline of the warrant and some of these placeholders. And if we need to have a broader discussion about money for that, we'll we'll schedule that separately, I think, when there's a little bit more to talk about.
Yeah, I would say if you haven't been on a tour of the public safety building on Elm Street, check it out. It's pretty eye-opening, the needs that are there.
So before we move on to our next item, Chris or Jennifer, within the top number of the town budget, I know that the whole packages typically only moves at somewhere in the 3.2% range. The police ask is a good deal higher than that, without implying that there's a dime of it that isn't necessary. Are these numbers that at some point you'll be prepared to talk to us about fitting into an overall balanced budget?
Yes, I actually presented presented a balanced budget to the select board at their last meeting. So at any point, I know we're waiting for a few more numbers to come in. Because as you know, it just, you put the budget together at a certain time and, we're still waiting for state aid. I know property and liability and workers' comp, I think we're waiting for that to come in a little bit. But I'd be ready to present a balanced budget whenever you're ready to hear it.
Okay, I suspect we should do that. But my question, maybe we'll just incorporate that into the conversation about the budget overall, which perhaps we should put up sooner rather than later. Can somebody arrange for, in the presentation that you made to the select board, were there slides or other written materials? I'm sure there were.
Yeah, I presented a budget. I'm not sure what you're used to all seeing here. I have looked at some of the previous budgets and warrant articles, but I presented what was called a budget overview, and it had all the estimated revenues and the recommended budgeted line items that might change a little bit, waiting for some more numbers to come in. But so you had the budget overview, and I did have a 10-slide presentation as well, showing a couple graphs of how, I think 82%.
I'm sorry, I didn't need you to describe it. I just wondered whether it existed, and if it does, if we could get that distributed to the members of this committee.
Okay.
Good. Okay. I think perhaps, Chris, we have a representative of South Shore Vote coming in at 8. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So why don't we maybe move on to the outline of town meeting and some of the ordinary articles. And like I said, the chiefs are welcome to stay, but they surely don't have to. It's late, so feel free. So I forwarded around a document that I received from your office that was the draft table of contents for the warrant, and then a series of suggested warrant articles, the first one of which is the South Shore Vogue article, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. If you want to give us a kind of a brief overview of what's easy, what's hard, what's likely to come, what's unlikely to come.
Sure. Let me, sorry, I got my computer booted me out. I had to go to my cell phone, and I'm back on my laptop. So give me just a second here. I will share. I don't know where to go. Okay. Can you all see the
yes.
Yeah, there we go. All right. So this is the table of contents of our draft warrant. First the report is in progress. The report of committees, I'm not aware of any at this point, but sometimes there's a report of committees that gets presented. Those are just routine. The budget you're in the process of hearing We don't have a full accounting of unpaid bills, so I'm hoping for not many. I think we cleaned up a lot of special. Same thing with supplemental appropriations. Stabilization will follow our policies. Capital improvements is being reviewed now. The revolving funds we can talk about tonight. Chapter 91 we can talk about tonight. The annual real estate exemptions we can talk about tonight. Those are just annual updates. CPC's in progress. You'll hear Sal Show VOTEC tonight. And then you have a series of articles that involve potentially large expenses for major projects. You will hear when the School Facilities Committee comes before you the middle high school feasibility study question. The Town Hall Building Committee is engaging with the construction manager at risk, and they're preparing to present to the Select Board on the 28th an updated number where everything is, where they think they are. The Fields and Courts, there was a session last week. There's a public meeting coming up, I think, in 2 weeks to talk about a plan and to see if there's feasibility for it and an interest and support in the community for it. It involves a couple of sites and a mixture of courts and field upgrades. The public safety building you've heard, I think that it's pretty clear from anyone who hasn't seen it. If everybody wants to take a tour of it, you're welcome to. The building was not meant to do what it does, and it does it begrudgingly. And there are areas of the building that are substandard, and some of which are in potential violation of standards. So we have to address those. Some of which we're able to do in the very short term, and some of which are going to take a lot more effort. Sewer system plan upgrades. As I believe has been publicly discussed, as I know has been publicly discussed at sewer commission meetings, the new membranes, which were only installed 2 years ago, were supposed to have a lifespan of 10 years, are already having issues. The town is in active engagement with the manufacturer about a warranty claim. That said, they're going to have to be replaced. Who pays for them is going to be the big debate. But it appears that the system is going to have to be replaced. We just don't know how yet. So that said, that is going to come to a head one way or another over the next couple of months, and there may need to be some action taken at town meeting. You'll hear more. Communications tower, you've already heard the last couple of meetings. We've been moving in this direction. Hopefully, this will be where we're able to perhaps lease the site and have the town meeting approve as an actual tenants for a site. We'll see where the next month or two goes. The Valor Act is a request that's been raised to consider. The town's already adopted the Brave Act, which is incorporated into the real estate exemptions. The Valor Act allows for tax work-offs by veterans. Some communities have done this. We have not. So there's a request for the town to prepare this and put it on a warrant by at least some members of the select board, and I expect the entire select board to do that at some point. And we'll have to come up with a plan. We're working with the assessors to determine what that might look like. The stormwater management bylaw revisions, I think it's a follow-up to some of the work that was done in December. And then as you see, there's a whole string of potential zoning bylaw amendments, which you'll be seeing in March. Those are fairly complicated and simple. Some of them are very simple. Right now, the town is engaged in a kind of a cleanup, I guess is the simplest way to put it. The bylaw is old. It needs to be cleaned up, both from a form and content point of view, so that it cites the right sections of state law, things like that, that it's in the right context and form, as well as some definitional changes that may need to be updated just for modernization's sake. The committee is now kicking around, and the planning board will be seriously having public hearings about more substantive changes they might want to recommend. So I would pay attention to those as we go. So as you can see, I think the zoning is going to be the biggest topics again, and you'll be hearing from those next month. And the capital projects, both, I guess, the content of them, should they be there, and how to approach them is an ongoing conversation. So those are probably the biggest things that are coming up. There's most of the other stuff. I mean, the budget's always complicated, but I think it's pretty well in hand. And the capital budget, I think for all the conversations is fairly well in hand. And we'll get to a resolution. So that's a quick overview. Just are there any questions on any of these specifics?
Is he Mike?
Yeah, hey, Chris, just out of curiosity, I'm seeing for, Article 15, 16, 17, those are all placeholders, but Article 14, the middle high school is not a placeholder.
Well, it is. It is a placeholder. So
you ran out of space on the line.
Yeah, sorry, that's just a typo. So yes,
okay.
That's still they're all placeholders. So
okay, thanks.
It's a good catch, but thank you. It's not a those.
I have a couple of questions, but anyone else? I was flipping through the document that you sent to us, Chris, and the VOTEC thing is on this evening. The school facilities request, we were going to hear this evening, but we're not. So we're gonna have to get that on another list. The town hall building committee, Mary, they're talking about not next Wednesday, a week Wednesday, the 1st.
Yeah, March 1st said that would work for Mark and Phil. So
okay. And have you heard anything back from school facilities? Were they thinking about the same night?
March 1st, yes.
Okay, so it'll be facilities night. The fields and courts article, I know I've asked this question before, but who owns that? What department is it coming from?
Well, it's a select board driven conversation that incorporates the rec board and other community organizations. So, but the conversation has been driven by the select board based on the study that was done, and my office is coordinating meetings on this. The study, which was, again, I don't know that you've actually had a. Did we not come in and did Michelle not walk you through the study? We can have a meeting where she kind of walks you through where we are on this anytime you want. It's not.
I'd be interested to hear from Michelle, but I mean, ordinarily something like this comes from a committee of elected or appointed.
Well, the select board is driving this, so they're elected. So that's.
How about? I mean, it seems recreational to me. To our friends on the
they're involved. They're absolutely involved in this, and they've been at the heart of their most recent set of conversations. So rec and a number of community organizations that are involved in youth schools, they're all involved in the conversation. So the question is, there seems to be a plan that people are coming around to as a first step. Now there's a bunch of boxes that need to be checked to see A, is there actual community support, and B, are all the committees that are involved, because one of the sites is on the school grounds, does everyone kind of come around and support it? So that's what's coming together. If that doesn't happen, this won't go any further.
Okay, well, when the time comes, obviously we're going to be interested in seeing folks, and and we're always happy to hear from Michelle. But I personally, and I'm only 1/9 of this committee, so it doesn't really matter beyond my 1/9ness. But I'd like to hear from the rec board. It's in their remit, and if it's selectmen driven, well, one of them can come along and tell us what the drivers are. Mary?
Yeah, this is more of a general question. So between articles, 14 through 18, you have anywhere from $35 to $40 million asks sitting there. And I guess I'm just curious if the long range, and I'm not sure what the name of it actually was, but the long range financial planning group. When you have things like that, if they all end up in front of the town, some guidance about how to think about them and prioritize them is really important, especially for projects that have been around for 10 years, say, weighing that against, some newer things. I'm not sure where my question is in there, but I guess I'm looking for guidance.
I think it's fair to say that there's parallel conversations going on. One is, what are the nature of the town's major when I say I'm talking about capital infrastructure projects, right? I'm not talking about trucks and vehicles and, windows here. I'm talking about major physical infrastructure challenges. What are they? What are the priority lists? And we've done this multiple times over the last 5-6 years, right? They're not unknown items. We did a study about 6+ years ago before the last town hall committee to line things up. And then we had a number of other big studies. We have a couple of them. We've had some targeted conversations. The parallel conversation is what is the town willing to pay, right? And because there's more than one project, the conversation is also what is, and again, this is a lot of folks are talking about this, and Jennifer has been working a lot of numbers just to show what the various impacts are, and I think that those conversations are going to continue. Is what does and again we're talking, there's funding for CPC can pay for things like the historic part of town hall and fields and courts, right? As long as they're not, CPC can't pay for stadiums and field turf, but it can pay for lots of other things that are recreation. And it can pay for historical renovations. There's chapter 90 money that can help for sidewalks and roads because there's a big conversation about that going on, but only so much of that. And the question is, how much is the town willing or able to pay extra for a period of time for major infrastructure? There are some towns that do this continuously. There are some towns that do this periodically. Quasit hasn't done a vote like that in 20+ years, right? I think that was the schools was the last big conversation.
Well,
like that, right?
no vote that went well. It was a notable and unfortunate failure. Otherwise, we'd already have a town hall.
So, but I think that the conversation on the financial side as well. What's the capacity again, and remembering that a major school project is like orders of magnitude larger than anything else, right? If you're building a brand new school building, it doesn't fit in even that conversation. But major renovations to schools, public safety, town hall, fields and courts, all of those things. What does it cost, and what can you, and what would debt cost, and how much would it cost the median household? We have those numbers. We're talking about them internally, and I think the long range committee, when it meets again, is kind of another public conversation about this, apart from the projects, right? Because so one of the questions, well, what's the number? What can people get themselves comfortably around, and how do you fill in projects? Jennifer has done a lot of that work, and when she came from Falmouth, they grappled with major public infrastructure work, and they came to an approach, which I won't speak for her, but which is a very well thought out and very detailed approach that she's been socializing, and it's under conversation. Rather than a one-off, it's more of a global. I mean, the thing is that the town's infrastructure challenges aren't going away tomorrow. There's a series of things coming, and then after you're 10 years down the road, there may be, may need to be something else done. So the questions are not just the buildings and the infrastructure, but how much are people willing to pay, and what, if you pick a dollar number per household, median household, that pays for X amount, is that enough? Can we make things fit in there? And what can we get done? I know it's a long-winded answer that doesn't really give you specifics. Did it help in the slightest?
It did a little bit. So is the long range planning group still having conversations?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a little mini group and there's a bigger group. So the little mini group is having conversations, and the bigger group is, I think, isn't there a meeting scheduled sometime soon, Jennifer? The bigger group, I don't remember the date.
No, not right now.
Okay.
And then just a side question to all that, and we can ask School Facilities Committee when they come before us March 1st, but I would assume, as I understand it, they're also preparing a list of major repairs and maintenance that needs to be done to the school. Even if they're looking to build a new school there, I think it seems like there are things that need to be done. Would that simply go to capital budget, or would that be bundled into a warrant article?
I don't know. I mean, there isn't a one-stop shop for any of these things, right? I mean, if there's a major, the budget and the capital plan annually go through, the regular process. When you're talking about asking people to pay more, which would require a public vote, everyone kind of has to have that conversation. this board and select board publicly, and because the select board controls that, right? The select board determines what goes on a ballot and what goes on a warrant. So at the end of the day, and obviously capital budgets are in the middle of these conversations too. There's also, as you know, the specialized committees, because some of these things require really in-depth work, which is why there's a school facilities committee in the bylaw, why there's been a town hall committee set up, and why there might be a building committee for, some other big building should the town go forward with something like public safety, because it requires a little more in-depth work, and you have to kind of, do that to the exclusion of other. And again, I think that's what the school facilities committee used to be, right? I guess when the buildings were built, that committee kind of did things, but again, it was a long time ago. So the conversation continuing.
Okay, thank you.
Well, it's 8:02. So
Tom Hickey's here. Look at that. Would you like me to promote him and jump right to that?
By all means, we pride ourselves on running on schedule in this shop, so we may as well accommodate our special guests.
There he is.
Good evening, everyone.
Tom, good evening. I'm Rob Hillman. I think we've spoken before. I know we've emailed this.
Yes.
I'm introducing you to the Cohasset Advisory Committee. Tom Committee. We understand that there is a matter that your district has asked each of its towns to put on its warrant. I'll let you explain it to the board, to the committee, and we may have some questions, and we'll either look for more information or some time to digest it, or we'll vote straight away, depending on how the committee feels. So, all yours.
Thank you so much, and thanks for fitting me in tonight and being flexible, as I just finished up a school committee meeting, and this works very well for me. So thank you. When we last came to you about a regional agreement change, it would have been back in the spring of 2018. So if you were on advisory then, I probably would have talked to you about a regional agreement that hadn't been updated since the mid-1980s. And we did a real thorough review of the agreement. But only 5 years later, I'm back to you again to ask you to consider supporting amendments to our agreement from 2018. The major reason for doing so is because we've had interest
Tom, can I stop you for a second? I think I'm the only member who was on then, which feels a little peculiar. But can you, that's okay, good. So can you explain just in a really summary way how why it is you're asking the town of Cohasset, how is it that the VOTEC is structured, and why it is that these sorts of changes, what the agreement is, something that basic. Not long, just, summary. Thanks.
Real brief. Cohasset was one of 6 towns that agreed to create this school in 1959, 1960. Whitman and Hanson were added in 1982, 83, and we've had an 8-town district. You form a regional vocational school, you need a charter, you need a regional agreement. And so under the state laws that this school was created thanks to your support. So a regional agreement is the governing document for the school district. If we want to make a change through our school committee, mostly through our school committee, it requires a vote of the committee, and then any changes must go in front of all of our member towns, and two-thirds of those towns would need to vote in the affirmative on the proposed amendments in order for a change to be made. So Cohasset's involvement is, we're the other public school district that Cohasset belongs to. And you have, there's an 8-member school committee. Each town appoints 1 member through its select board for a 3-year term. George Cooney represents Cohasset, and prior to George, we had Kenny Thayer representing Cohasset. And so our governing board, the regional school committee, is bringing forward to you officially a series of changes to our agreement. So that's the backstory as to where this all fits. So I would be making similar presentations and trying to answer as many questions as I can Why are you here? Why is this important? And so for me to say tonight briefly, we have been in conversation with the town of Marshfield for the better part of a year, as they are very much interested in becoming a member of the South Shore Regional Vocational School District. And in order for them to join, they had to create a regional planning committee. My school board has a subcommittee, which we have as a regional planning committee, and my involvement as well. We've been working with Marshfield to talk about what's involved with joining. It's a very interesting time, as you see in the news, when it comes to towns having access to vocational education, and Marshfield is a community that is not affiliated with any vocational school. So they see a great opportunity to join. What we see as a district, and you as a member town, is we have been invited into the MSBA pipeline. We are in the process of looking at a new or renovated school. Bringing on another roommate to help pay the bills is definitely something that I think is win-win. More kids will have access to vocational education, and I believe that it will assist all of our member towns. No matter how many children a town sends, it will help to have someone else supporting and paying those bills. So if I could have come to you tonight with a very simple answer, it would be, we'd like to have Marshfield join our district. We need to put the terms and conditions into our regional agreement. And that is the main thrust of why I'm here tonight. We also needed to spend some quality time with some good people at the Department of Education who are very diligent. There's a regional schools office, and then there's a legal department. So whatever I would be sharing with each town is something that has been vetted through the Department of Education, because under the rules and regulations, the person who has the ultimate authority at the bottom of the ninth inning, at the end of this process, is the commissioner. So I would not want to waste your time bringing forward a document that could potentially, even if it went through town meetings, end up on a commissioner's desk and have the commissioner reject it. So I'm confident that the document that's presented meets all the current requirements, and all of the changes are acceptable at the Department of Ed's level. Knowing that is comforting. Now I need to bring this to talk to our own community members, taxpayers, and voters about what's involved here. So I would be happy to give you a 5,000-foot view. If the changes in the regional agreement will incorporate what Marshfield will pay in order to join, and what Marshfield will pay in the future vis-a-vis an MSBA project. So to put some numbers to it, we said to Marshfield, there are two important factors to you joining. We're on the cusp of a new building, which will have an increased enrollment. I don't know what it'll look like, but the MSBA acknowledges we're not big enough to meet the demand in our region. So what we said to Marshfield was, we would like you to pay a share of our established stabilization fund, so that if in the future a 9-town district uses a stabilization fund to offset costs, it wouldn't be a question of whose money was that, did you pay up your share? And so that was something they readily agreed to. They said, yep, we understand that. We agreed on a percentage. We looked at some enrollment trends, and we said, okay, over the next few years, if we take your 8th grade population and we look back to, say, your current 4th grade population, I compared their numbers to all the 4th through 8th grade populations, and we came up with a little under 18%. So step one, Marshfield pays a little under 18% of our stabilization fund, which in July of 22 was a little over $2 million. So they will be paying into the district about a little under $400,000 over a 10-year period. That will make them whole. That will catch them up for all the years that our 8-member communities have been putting money away in stabilization. And as a side note, the major reason for stabilization for the 7 years we've been contributing to it is for this moment. The idea that one day we would get invited after 7 tries, we get invited into the MSBA pipeline. We've got to establish a feasibility budget. But if we wait and don't save any money, it will be a croaker to have to go back to our towns and say, oh, I need an operating increase. Oh, and by the way, I also need you to approve a big spike in a feasibility budget. So I'm proud to say that when MSBA invited us in last March, we already had the funds available to use for a feasibility study, and it had no further impact on any town budget. So step one for Marshfield, pay your share of stabilization, check. Step two, Marshfield calculating a formula to have them pay for future debt. We're in the early stages of this, of working on this building, but let me give you a few things to grab hold of. If we built a brand new school and we built it for the highest possible number, which the MSBA said would be 975 students, we're at 650 right now. So the MSBA was willing to say, if Marshfield comes in the district, we'll reimburse you for up to 975. Okay, so I said to our project manager, let's come up with some very rough numbers so I can talk to folks who wherever they stand on learning more about our school or what we're trying to do. Advisory FinComs are going to want to talk about some numbers. So the outside line right now for a school of that size, a vocational school of that size, could be closing in on, say, $300 million. So to me, that is such a big number. And even if I subtract 55% of that for what might be very close to MSBA reimbursement, those of you that have anything to do with school building projects know that while that is the prescribed reimbursement rate, there's so much that goes into a school building project that is not subject to reimbursement. And so I am definitely mindful that in order to do this right, bringing on a new community, a community that could take on a debt share and lighten the burden of our existing 8 towns would be very important. It would be good for kids. It would be good for being able to pay the bills for what would be a new or a renovated school. So the terms in this regional agreement would essentially say this: Marshfield will pay an adjustable share of any future debt for the first 5 years that they're a member. And then after 5 years, when we've recruited at least, the 4 grades in high school, then we'll take a snapshot of how many kids are in the building from Marshfield. We'll calculate a debt share, which is I would say it's simple, but it's basically the number of kids from your town divided by the total number of in-district kids. So where am I going with this? In my personal opinion, Marshfield could probably own about 18% of the building project, which means that whatever each town's assessment is, would probably get some sort of a haircut from, let's say, year 5 through year 30 or year 20, however long that would be bonded for. So I'll stop there. Rob, if I can hit any questions on Marshfield, because it's all downhill after that. The other changes I can speak to in a lot more in more brevity than the Marshfield part. But that's the real major thrust of what is included in these amendments. Sorry, Rob. I think you're.
You're right. I'd asked for questions, but I asked for it while I was muted, so that didn't help much. But Fran intuited it. So, Fran?
Now, my question is, does each town pay a per capita per student attending, or how is that fee reckoned?
I promise you, Fran, I will answer this question as briefly as I can. Most of a town's assessment is based on the Chapter 70 formula, the minimum contribution that is determined by the state that we're all waiting for with the new governor. But a portion of the assessment, capital, debt, transportation, and any costs beyond that state formula, the foundation budget, they are paid by per capita. They're paid by student. So if we take debt real simple, if the school committee tonight authorized debt, we're sitting right now in the middle of fiscal 23. What we would do, and this is in our regional agreement, we would look at the student enrollments from fiscal 22, 21, and 20, a 3-year look back. And we would calculate every town's share of whatever we wanted. Let's say we want to borrow $1 million. And we look back and we say, oh, Cohasset is 1% of the district's enrollment. Cohasset would own 1% of the share of the debt. We do similar calculations with, we do a 3-year rolling average with capital. Most of the capital we're buying is not borrowed money. We don't oftentimes borrow money, but if we're buying vocational equipment, things that are listed as capital. So there is a formula. It's in 2 pieces. The dog the tail. The dog is the biggest part of anybody's annual assessment is what the state says is the minimum contribution. But the other parts are not tied to the state at all. It is truly based on the number of children from your town.
Thank you. I have one other question. The price you quoted for a new school, 975 student school, does that include all machinery and equipment that are ready to walk in the door and go to work, or are there other expenses associated with that?
And that is an excellent follow-up to my point about how the reimbursement rate tends to drop when you see what exactly are they reimbursing. So Fran, the MSBA does have I think it's called FF&E, furniture, fixtures and equipment. That's an important component. But sadly, the MSBA and we are vocational communities trying to advocate, the FF&E ceiling is no different for a Voc school where you can imagine there's more specialized equipment. The short answer to your question is no. It is not soup to nuts turnkey. And I am being honest. I hope, at least I feel like I'm being honest in saying to school committee members, other constituents, that I personally do not believe that we will be able to build a school with such a huge enrollment increase from 650, which is what we have right now with the 130,000 square foot building. I don't think we'll be able to afford it. I don't mind saying that. And I also don't know if we've got the physical plant, namely the acreage we're on, in order to do that. To all of a sudden take in a freshman class of say 250 kids and all of the downstream stuff that you're starting to point to. Operating costs I mean, the idea that we could build the building is one thing. I would also be joining you and others to say, how are you going to fund the operating costs as you have to hire how many more teachers, how many more buses, et cetera. So we've got to be very, very cognizant that it's not just about getting a project passed and then not be able to right size it with our communities having to support more teachers, more health insurance, more buses. We've got to keep all of that in mind. So it's about building the building, and then we figure out the difference from there.
Well, I'd be concerned that if we're going to build a new facility, and I'm very much in favor of vocational education, we would need to have as close to state-of-the-art equipment as we possibly can. And I'm wondering what percentage over and above the construction cost might that represent? Do you have any idea?
I'm happy. I cannot give you a concise answer on that, but I can offer you this. We have been very successful, thankfully, great team here. We've been awarded over around $3.5 million of state grants for equipment. I was touring a few folks today from Situate's advisory board, and I would invite any of you, if you've never been to our school, I'd love to take you to lunch and I'd love to show you around the school. But I was able to brag to them just at 11 o'clock this morning, showing them the shops where all of our equipment is new or only a few years old. So I believe that we're well positioned that, Fran, if we migrated to a new building, a significant amount of the equipment that is currently in our machine shop, in our automotive shop, even in culinary arts, we got a $2.5 million grant to provide new equipment to carpentry and culinary arts. I think we're going to be able to migrate that equipment over. But when am I thinking? In a perfect world, the 28-29 school year is when we'll invite you all to a ribbon cutting. And it takes a long time, but if they're paying for half of it, I suppose we gotta be patient. But so I don't have an exact figure, but when we do start the visioning process, that absolutely is a question I will task our advisory committees with. Every one of our Voc programs has to have an industry advisory committee. So we are not merely going to Amazon or some catalog, or I know a guy who thinks we should have, we know a guy who should have this equipment. We want to hear from the people who are going to employ our kids that this is the equipment you need. And we've got to be honest and make sure we are right sizing these programs. We need to know that they're all economically viable. We don't want to overbuild. We don't want to overbuild if we're not going to be able to put kids in a program and put them out after they graduate. So I feel very, as a resident of our district, I'm a Hanson resident, so as a taxpayer as well, I feel like we can be very ambitious. We can design a great vision, and then we have to pay for it. So we've got to just keep our feet on the ground, but this is a great opportunity. And so I appreciate you asking those questions. I could go on and on, but that is definitely a big question mark for now. By the end of this calendar year, Fran, by December of 2023, I would say to you, we will probably have a design team being able to provide us with that very rough menu of here's what it will cost for you to renovate what you got. Here's what it would cost to build something for 700 kids. Here's the Taj Mahal cost. And that will then help inform our school building committee going to our towns and saying, look at the difference between renovating and new. Look at the difference between how we can right size it. I want our engineers to say, you're on a septic system. What are you going to do? You need to set aside a bigger leaching field. I don't know how that works, but I just have a gut. There are some gut checks here that we will have to just live with. We'll have to live within those confines as well. So a very exciting year ahead for us.
Thanks. A lot of questions. Thanks for the thoughtful answers.
No problem. Any other Marshfield questions, Mr. Chair? I'd be happy to answer, and then I'll promise I'll wrap up quickly.
That's what I was going to suggest is that there's the sort of the Marshfield part and the other parts. So hearing none, why don't you take us through the remainder of the
Thank you.
Updates to the agreement.
And I will be happy to come back at any point in the future if questions bubble up after the fact. It'd be my pleasure. The remaining changes to the agreement that go beyond grammar, punctuation, formatting are very few. Part of what we needed to do was remove some language that DESE asked us to put in 5 years ago on how to calculate a new member town's first year, how they would pay. Very simply put, 5 years ago, the plan was if we ever brought in a new town in the first year, they'd pay tuition and they'd cover their own transportation. DESE advised us in this process that there'll be enough time for them to factor them into the foundation budget. That's not earth-shattering, but it is new, and I just want to point out to you that. So now our regional agreement will say, it'll essentially say, if you're coming in as a new town, let's pretend that Duxbury were to come in. Although I won't use Duxbury, I'll use Pembroke. Pembroke School Committee invited me to do a presentation 2 weeks ago asking about the process for joining. So if Pembroke were to come in a couple years from now, I'd be back in front of you with different terms and conditions for Pembroke, whatever the best situation is at that time. That's what we would plug and play into a different agreement. So DESE said, take out that language, it's no longer relevant. We made 2 changes to the agreement regarding the withdrawal of a community. And this was us just doing we weren't told to do this. We were just doing our own reflection on the document. What we said were 2 things that we added 2 things, I think very common sense. First, we clarified what it meant when it said by a vote of the majority of the committee. I personally have I have a thing about always asking, is that a majority of those present or is that
a majority of the committee?
Precisely.
the perennial question.
So, and then we're all grabbing for the law books. This is covered under the budget. So everywhere in this agreement now, if it says there's a vote of the committee, we say of the membership or we say or a simple majority. So what we did here, because for a town to withdraw, it would have a major financial impact on those towns who stay behind. So what we did was we took out the vague majority of the committee and we replaced it with a majority of the membership of the committee. That's all. And we also said that if a town wanted to withdraw, the school committee would form a subcommittee and reach out to talk to the representatives of the towns. Because for a town to leave, it's the same exact process as a town coming in. The towns have to agree. It's an amendment to our regional agreement. So beyond that, there's only one other change. I guess I saved the more complicated one for the end. And this was driven by DESE. The Department of Education asked us to put in language that created what they called a default method for our school committee to vote to authorize debt. There's no easy way to explain this other than to say that under the state law, regional vocational schools their school committee has the power to start the process by voting at their level to incur debt. You might remember 2021. I would have come in front of you in 2021. We had an article seeking to authorize debt because we weren't invited into MSBA. We've been told no for 6 years. We had to do something. So we actually came in front of the towns. And at the time, the school committee started that process by taking a vote. They voted by a 2/3 vote of the membership. And we brought the process to each town meeting. What DESE told us, and I'll be honest, I'll be honest with you, I said, do we really have to do this? It's one more thing I have to explain to 8 towns because it doesn't matter to us. And they said, no, we really need you to put this in there. So what this says is the following. If a future school committee wanted to authorize debt at their level, and it was the method under the law that meant it had to go to each town meeting, the school committee could vote it by a simple majority. They wanted us as a regional school district to have a lower bar to get it from the school committee to the towns. I'm not entirely sure why. I'm not opposed to it, but I did have my misgivings initially because the perception that it's easier for, well, can the voc tech commit us to debt? The answer is no. The school committee has no authority to do that. It only has the authority to authorize bringing a debt issue to each of our towns. So the state said, lower your bar, go from 2/3 of your membership down to a simple majority. So that to me is probably the most substantive non-Marshfield change to the agreement. So what changes in this process is that if there was a vote at the school committee level and we didn't have 6 out of 8 people present for a meeting, or we had a quorum and we voted a simple majority, that would move the measure along. We don't do this very often. I've been at the school since 1994. And I came in as a teacher just on the heels of an addition that was put on in 92, 93. And with the exception of an MSBA project for a roof in 2011. And then again, I believe when we came to you looking for an authorization in 2021, this is not something that will happen very often. But certainly this is something that I feel comforted that there's a check and balance. With a lower bar from our school committee, it still has to go to each of our towns. And if any one town votes the matter down, it dies. So this is not a casual, it's a very high bar to approve a debt authorization under this method. So I apologize for going on it. I don't want to leave it. It's complicated. I guess if I say it 20 times, to me, it's not complicated, but it's a lot. We're lowering the bar on debt authorization only at the school committee level. The towns still control whether or not this goes forward. And quite honestly, if we are bringing a debt authorization forward and we don't already know whether we have the support of the people that are paying attention to the purse, then we're not doing our job. But that would be the change. And that's where I will stop. I have no further content to add.
Any other questions from the committee? Chris, do you have anything to add to that? I mean, I think it was pretty comprehensive.
Translation, talk too much.
No.
I appreciate that. I don't have there's not an emoji that says zip it. So I appreciate you listening to all of that. I do.
I appreciate it too. So then I guess we should thank you, Tom. We'll take it under advisement. And certainly, if we have any further questions, either for your return, unlikely, or documents possible, although we'll funnel them to you through Chris's office.
Absolutely. And again, open invitation. If any of you have never seen the inside of the school and would like to stop by, however you'd like to do that, you're welcome anytime. Thank you.
Grant, thank you very much.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Is this right for us to vote to recommend the article to town meeting, or do we need more information?
I think it's potentially ripe, but it's not quite ripe enough. I think we should probably circulate the document, see if anybody has, I think voting on something, I got sent something which I probably should have circulated. I'm not sure whether it's the latest iteration though. So why don't we do this between Tom and Chris? Chris, your hand is up.
I thought Tracy circulated all of that in the packet to everybody. Did everyone get it? She circulated a packet to all of you directly. At least I thought she did. And there were about 6 or 7 attachments.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah, no, and 3 or 4 of them are from Tom. So
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So again, I'm not trying to force a vote, but I think we circulated to everybody. I thought we did. Patrick, do you have it? Do you have it? I have it. That means that everyone has it then. So at least they should have it. So
oh, there it is. Is this the one from the 10th, it would be the one from the 10th. Yeah, I'm sorry, I was on the road and wasn't able to look at it as thoroughly as I ought to. I think that we should probably not vote on this, just pending everybody having a chance to look at these materials, and we'll put it on the agenda for a discussion and vote at either the next meeting or the one after that. Does that work for everybody? Does anybody? I just don't feel like we're ready to vote on this if we all haven't had a chance to look at the document. And we have plenty of time to get back if there are any particular questions, but
I'm fine with that.
All right, so well, we're not tabling it as such. We're just not going to quite reach it.
My only add is, by the way, I have taken a couple of tours. It's an amazing facility. It's not our generation's VOTEC. It's a very different modern facility. The things they do there are very cool and very modern. And they also have a very exciting little cafe where the students, which I've eaten in with some of my town manager colleagues. But they also do a lot more than that. So they also have an auto body shop that looks like it's 21st century. So you could be building, a fancy, I don't know, do you have an electric car facility in there now too? You probably do. Not yet.
Not yet, Chris. No, but that's, you can imagine that's part of the visioning of what we need to prepare for.
Yeah, the chief will tell you about a blanket you're going to need, but that's a different story. No, those I've spent more time in a different one of the big VOTECs. I haven't been in yours in years, but they really are. The good ones are phenomenally interesting buildings in terms of learning environments.
It's been there since the beginning. I do appreciate your continued support and stand ready to answer any other questions you have. So I thank you all again.
Great. Okay, then we can. Good night. Thank you. We can move on.
I haven't been there for quite a few years, but I know even when I was last over there, it was a pretty impressive thing. I know they've only gotten better. So I think I'm going to go take a tour myself. I've been thinking about it. So.
Okay, so I see that we got 4 documents in that packet relating to the VOTEC. I'm going to commit to reading them. We got the police and fire packet that got circulated. Okay, so everything else I think everybody's seen. So where does that leave us on our agenda?
So there were 5 articles that are routine. If you
I was thinking, yeah, I realize, we're more or less on schedule. I think I would have an enormous sense of personal accomplishment if we could bang out a few actual votes on actual routine articles. There's enough to vote. So Chris, why don't you walk us into them and we'll see if there is. And if not, we'll have them teed up for first thing at the next meeting.
I'll put these on the screen just a second. But the first 2 are reports of committees, the annual report and reports of committees. There isn't historically a vote on those. It's just a motion to approve. Again, I'm just socializing it to see if you want to if the advisory committee wants to take a vote simply saying that, yes, we should adopt the annual report of the town because we should, and you should hear reports of committees because you should. That's really the only action to take on either one of those. And again, I don't know I don't know there are any reports of committees, but there is an annual report that will be presented. So, but it's really just a compilation of stuff. It's not an actionable, item that turns into, projects. So, do you want to just, again, I don't, sometimes in the last few years, you haven't taken a position on it. I'm just socializing it if you wanted to, but
I think probably once it's at least prepared, okay. I think it's unlikely that it would be a document that's irrational and that we couldn't stand behind. But I think there's a sense relative to Patrick's question that voting things in the blind is probably just not exactly the right way to go, even though this would be the easiest one. So that's 1 and 2 are reports. So we'll get back, we'll loop back to them. What do we have that might be might be live, ready to go.
So here's one. This is draft Article 8, and I will refer to it as draft Article 8 because I can't swear that it'll have that exact same number, but it will be called Departmental Revolving Funds Annual Spending Limits. And this will be for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023. And these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 revolving funds that the town currently has. We're not planning on changing any of the spending limits. So this is the article. Any questions for me?
What's the road moratorium fee?
That's if you seek to dig the road up and open the road before the moratorium is up, which is a hard ban for 5 years and a limited ban for 10, you got to pay fees, and those fees go into a fund to be used for road maintenance. So that's what that's for.
So how does that come under a spending authority?
Well, all the funds have to have a cap framed by law. They have to have a maximum amount that can go in them. So these used to be handled in a different way. So now all that the town meeting has to do every year is just re-adopt the annual spending authority, which, by the way, can be amended during the year by the select board anyway. So I hate to say this is a formality, but it's a formality, but it has to be done. So these caps, we haven't exceeded the caps on any of these ever, to the best of my knowledge. And the authority to spend them is actually in the bylaw. For example, the town manager's on all these, but some of them, like DPW is on the road moratorium across the tree bank. Food permits is public health as well. Elder affairs is elder affairs. You know, the money that comes in for a program, they authorize to go back out to pay for a vendor.
But my confusion is that I want to have the road opened up because I want to put in a new gas line or something, and I pay a fee to the town to open the road, correct?
Correct, and that goes into this.
It goes into this fund, but who is spending this money once it's in the fee? Where does this? How does
the town does? The public works will. The town spends it. It's just it can only be spent on roads. The way the revolving fund works.
Oh, I see. Okay, all right. So the fees go towards whatever that is. I get that.
Correct.
Right, correct. That's clear. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, we confront this every year. It is in the nature of a housekeeping amendment. I would hear a motion, and I'll kind of quote the formula that we've been using for motions and see if anybody has an improvement. But what we had in the last few meetings, our motions have gone as follows. Does the advisory committee recommend the town meeting approve, in this case, Article 8 of the warrant in the form contained in the draft warrant dated February 15, 2023? That's a form of motion that is pretty reasonably clear to, when the time comes to send the warrant to the printer to print out. The advisory committee recommends approval of this article, and the way we identify it, it's susceptible to being found out what we vote on. Does that formulation work for anybody? Does anybody want to actually move it?
Motion to recommend Article 8 in the form of the February 15th draft warrant article.
I'll second.
Ellen and Jean seconds. Ellen, did you get a version of that works for you? Good. Okay, any further discussion on current Article 8, which we'll refer to as the Department Revolving Funds article? Comment, Fran?
Yeah, if as Chris said, that this is a sort of tentative, so if more than likely it's not going to change, but if it does change, then we have to revote them. We have to
yes.
Changes, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that we're recommending it in the form it's in front of us. If that form changes, we need to revisit it.
That's how I heard it. Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Anything else? Okay, then vote by roll call. Gina Stino.
Aye.
Mike Barclay.
Aye.
Fran Collins.
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy.
Aye.
Mark Maggi.
Aye.
Ellen Mar.
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick.
Aye.
Meg Wheeler.
Aye.
And Rob Hillman is an aye. We've approved one. All right, Chris, we're on a roll. Let's go. What else do we have?
Okay, you have Article 10, Mass General Laws, Chapter 91 liability. Again, this is an annual article. It's required if we do any work and we get grants or have any other kind of work done in the Chapter 91 tidelands. It's adopted every year. We do actually have work going on right now, actually at the boat ramp. So it's important that we have this in place because the next big project on the harbor that involves the town is the town dock restoration. So it's important that we keep this updated every year so we can actually do work at the tidelands and the Chapter 91 tideland areas. So, questions?
Anyone?
Make a motion that we accept it in the form presented.
I'll second.
Okay, Fran and Mary. Ellen, you've got to just use the same form. Great, awesome. Okay, then discussion? None. Vote by roll call. Gina Stino.
Aye.
Mike Barclay.
Aye.
Fran Collins.
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy.
Aye.
Mark Maggi.
Aye.
Ellen Mar.
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick.
Aye.
Nick Wheeler.
Aye.
And Rob Pillman, I too am an aye. Okay.
Next is the ever popular additional real estate exemption annual renewal. This includes a package of exemptions that are both for seniors, for qualified elderly, veterans, and legally blind taxpayers. So it combines a number of them. There's various exemptions for veterans, for the elderly, for low-income elderly, and they need to be renewed annually. The last change that was done was several years ago when we added the BRAVE Act. We added some additional veterans pieces. So this is in the same form it's been in the last couple of years, and it needs an annual renewal.
Okay. A motion, perhaps? I'm sorry, did somebody, can somebody move the draft article?
Move that we accept the motion before us in the form presented.
Fran, a second?
Second.
Patrick, any questions?
No.
Okay, I mean, it's the same thing we've done over and over, so we'll do it again. Vote by roll call. Gina Stino.
Abstain.
Mike Barclay.
Aye.
Fran Collins.
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy.
Aye.
Mark Maggi.
Aye.
Ellen Mar.
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick.
Aye.
Meg Wheeler.
Aye.
And Rob Hillman is also an aye. Okay.
Those are the first 5 articles, so there you go.
I'm sorry, did we do for which 5?
No, first you voted on 3, but
oh, right, okay.
The committees
yeah,
and the report, so yeah.
We'll roll back to them when we have at least a list of the potential reports. So
you've heard social vote tax, that's now teed up. So you're about 20% through the warrant already. So.
Not the hard 20% though.
No, I didn't say that, but that's still 20%. So.
Okay. Well, that's good. It's progress. I think what I'd like to do now is I emailed to everyone at the beginning of this meeting, or roughly the beginning of this meeting, just a sketch document of the meeting schedule and the topics that we need to cover, with an eye toward getting them filled in a little bit. If everyone has that or is just prepared to chat about it, perhaps we could talk about what makes sense, and then between Mary and I, we'll get people lined up. Just give me a second to get it on my screen. There. So we got through what we promised to get through this meeting, except we'll need to vote on the vocational technical school matter. Next week we have no meeting. March 1, we talked about having oh, this isn't the last draft that I meant to send, but it's close enough. The school building committee and the town hall building committee and then after that, we don't have anything locked in. On the second page is just a number of things that were top of mind to me about what we need to review. Chris, why don't we look at the department budgets? We've done police and fire. We've done, we've talked with the school department. Generally, we talk to DPW and IT. And usually I have a kind of a placeholder for other, which is you or Jen or somebody else to talk about, you know, the various other departments, the library, for example, other, you know, I'm thinking of others, there are a bunch of them. Do you see those as people who are ready to go if we need to fill them in?
So on the first, how many you want to take? I mean, DPW would be a natural. It's DPW. Remember, that's also facilities, and that's also, well, it's facilities. It's DPW and all their pieces.
I mean, if school building comes in, that's going to be a long discussion.
It is school building plus town hall.
Also, we had a memo in our packet that had a form of placeholder for a request for an annual warrant item that says school building is asking for 1.5 million. I had heard 2 million. I don't know which it is.
It's in the minutes at 2 million.
Yeah, and this form shows 1.5 million.
I saw that too. Do we know anything about why that's different?
I think it's capital budget shows 2 million when we reviewed with capital budget.
You should ask for clarification because I've heard both numbers. The recent one I've heard is 1.5, but you should get clarification from them.
I think we'd ask them to send us some materials before they come. I mean, it's going to be one number or the other, or conceivably a third, but you know, they'll all be in the same order of magnitude.
Big.
Do we think that, I mean, do we want to have, I don't want to keep a department head waiting for an hour and 45 minutes while we do 2 building committees. So what if on the first we did the 2 building committees, scheduled them for say 7 and 8:15, schools first, town hall second, and then see if we can address any more routine stuff that evening? Does that make sense? Or, I mean, I'm Patrick's concerned about them being pretty long or valid ones. Jean, then Mary.
I just have to say out loud that schools don't typically like to meet at 7. So you might want to be aware of that when we try and schedule it.
Well, this is their building committee. Mary, you've been in touch with them.
Maybe feel them out.
Because that's their public hearing night, and as we all remember, the public hearing lasted about 10 minutes, if that.
Okay, good.
So I don't think that's going to be an issue, because my guess is I haven't looked at the posting, but I'm guessing it's posted for 5:30 or 6. So I don't think that's an issue. And I would actually, hopefully we can get Jason Earls, who's the chair, to come in. I was just going to suggest that perhaps with those 2 committees coming in, maybe could we have Michelle do just a readout of the field study for us that night? Does that make sense?
So 3 subjects.
Yeah, I think it's worth being a little ambitious. I mean, if the prior discussions get really out of hand, we can roll something off. But
I mean, the only thing I would feel bad about is if we had the other 2 at 7 and 8:15, having Michelle hang around till a later hour.
Well, if the show's gonna be fast, if you put her up first, just put her first, start easy and then roll into the others. I mean, she can be 15 minutes or 20 minutes, right? If you do fields first.
Yeah.
If we wanted a summary, I suppose, and then if we feel the need to revisit it, we can bring her back. And that gives us a third thing on that agenda. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah, what I'll ask from school facilities is for them to, there's no minutes or videos up after the 10th of January, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But if they could come with, obviously any information they have, but they're supposed to be putting together a maintenance list. So if they have that would be helpful. Is there anything else?
From
them that we would like to see? I don't know how much they have, to be quite honest.
I don't know. I mean, they've got a with school facilities, I'm primarily interested in what they have to say about a $1.5 or $2 million ask.
Study.
Everything else, the study ask. Everything else is, it's important, but that's the one that's real kind of showstopper. So I see Ellen.
Yeah, no, I'm all set.
Okay. So that brings us to the 8th. We don't have anything on for the 8th right now. Do we want to, I think that would be a good opportunity to perhaps do the other departments. When do we anticipate that capital or CPC, is CPC going to have anything for this meeting?
I'm going to be there on March 1.
Okay.
Yeah, I think to answer your questions, Rob, yes, CPC should have something, maybe a couple of things, because if town halls does go forward, that'll be a big ask of CPC on the historic side. And I believe the Beechwood Playground is moving forward as well. So that's another CPC ask. There's not a lot, but there's those. And if the fields, of course, move forward, that could also have a CPC component. So I would be prepared to have DPW, IT, and the Jennifer conversation. Jennifer going to walk you through any of the rest of the budget you'd like.
Yes.
On the 8th, and then you could vote on Article 13, the South Shore VOTEC, and I give you an update on what the others are.
Okay. Which then gets us out to.
Can I jump in for just 1 second?
Sure.
I'm not in the office on March, the week of the 5th or the 6th, and that next week I'm at school. So there's going to be 2 Wednesdays I won't be here to give that presentation. I just want to let you know.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot that.
That's okay.
Unless you want to dump it on me, which I could do.
Sure. I mean, no, if it's up to the committee. It's completely,
Well, I think
completely up to you all.
We'll want to hear from you when we go over, before we vote the entire budget article, but we'll work around your schedule on that. Chris, maybe you should be prepared to just give us the summary at that point. I know it's kind of an iterative process, so we'll see where it's at. But I do think getting DPW and IT plus a vote on the vote plus an update, which brings us out to March 15th, the not at all concerning Ides of March. Who gets that day? Are capital or CPC going to be ready by that point? Probably not. They never are. I respect and love them dearly, but
well, remember, you have the water and sewer budgets to look at too. Don't forget them.
There's a thought. That's pretty Ides of Marchy. Why don't we say water and sewer? I think they're both on my plate. So,
and by then we'd also have an update on the sewer plant, I think, about where that's going. So,
okay. What am I? Well, there's obviously the whole planning thing. Well, I have it just in here as a placeholder of planning and zoning. When is their public hearing, and then Fran?
February 27th.
Okay, so we can get to them sooner rather than later. Fran?
You might be able to get some of them on the 15th and the 22nd. So the zoning may take more than one meeting.
Expect it will. Do we want to do zoning part 1 on the 15th and carry it into the next meeting? And I realize that in that context, 1 is a strong word, but we do have we have to do our duty. So
Planning meets on Wednesday night, so we would have to check with their schedule.
okay.
Tom Callahan's can't be in 2 places at one time.
I find that hard to believe, but I'll take your word for it.
So why don't we, I'll go, Mary and I will get back to, one of us will get back to you on what works with them for them.
Okay, if we have to slide a meet, I mean, it's a big deal. And if they meet the same nights and they're very busy, and I know they've been.
Yeah, they're every other Wednesday.
Every other Wednesday. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, let's get
We'll
out
just have to see what their schedule is.
asynchronous with them. Fran?
Yeah, I did speak with the sewer folks, and the only thing they have pending right now is is relining the sewer line that's coming across Jacobs Meadow and the issue with the membranes, which hopefully it won't cost us anything, but they were having problems with it, that's for sure. I haven't spoken to the water folks yet. I haven't got a hold of them, but I'm not aware of anything massive coming out of them.
So why don't we do this? We'll make when Patrick and Mary are able to find us a night when the key players in the zoning articles are available, we'll just set aside presumably the 22nd as zoning night, and plus anything else we have to do. And then the 29th we leave open for we'll plan that out when we get a little bit closer. I mean, it's always, everything can be changed. And then the 5th of April is a placeholder for us. I think the select board is scheduled to vote the final warrant on, is it the 7th of April? I thought I saw of April. I thought I saw that on a schedule, which is odd because that would be a Friday. But I mean, from where I sit, I think we've planned ourselves out far enough so that we'll just have this conversation in a briefer form at the next meeting and fine tune it as we need to. Anybody? Am I missing Ellen?
Yeah, Chris, do we know yet if there are going to be any citizens petitions?
We didn't get any.
I'm sorry?
So the deadline was today, and no one, we haven't received any, so
Okay.
no, there's none.
And I have a second question.
Sure.
For Jennifer, for the balanced budget that has been drafted for schools, did it include their budget at 4% or 5%?
No, when I presented it to the select board, I put basically a placeholder in there at 3%. And I told them it would not increase from the
So
3.
are we going to ask the schools to do a 3% budget?
We're in discussions with them right now. I'm hoping it comes down a little bit. We have Chris and I met with the school department, and we have some ideas of some of the things that they want to do and how we can structure certain things. But for the operating budget, we're working on that, but it would definitely not be higher than 3%.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we have a plan. It gets us through the next couple of meetings for sure, and then we'll fill in from there. I don't know whether do we have any minutes out there? Okay.
Yeah, 2 sets.
Ellen, can you remind me of the dates on the first one?
1 and February 8th. February 1 and February 8th, I think.
Yeah.
February 1 and February 8th.
That one's muted.
Get those in front of me.
Saturday, February 11th email from Ellen.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yeah, I just got it in front of me. Thank you. Okay. I'm looking at the minutes of February 1st. Why don't we do it by way of a motion and then comments?
I move to approve the February 1 draft minutes.
I'll second.
Patrick and then Jean. Comments, questions, amendments? Okay, hearing none. Vote by roll call. Gina Stino.
Aye.
Mike Barclay.
Aye.
Fran Collins.
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy.
Aye.
Mark Maggi.
I'll abstain because I wasn't present.
Okay. Ellen Mar.
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick.
Aye.
Meg Wheeler.
Aye.
And Rob Hillman. Aye. So thank you, Ellen. And then that leaves us with the minutes.
February
8th.
I move to approve the draft minutes for the February 8th, 2023 advisory committee meeting.
Second.
Comments, questions? Okay, hearing none. Vote by roll call. Gina Stino.
Aye.
Mike Barclay.
Aye.
Fran Collins.
Aye.
Mark, I don't think you were at that meeting.
I missed that one as well. Sorry, gang.
Well, it's like the test strip in Ellen's minutes. We know they're right when. Ellen Mar.
It was a 2-year postponed surprise 40th birthday party for my wife. So the consequences of missing that birthday would have been much greater than the consequences of missing the meeting.
I think my response to Mark when he said that it was a surprise birthday party for his wife was that, there is an indemnity statute that towns will indemnify board members, but not for alimony. So, happy birthday to your wife. What was the surprise effective?
It was. So thank you.
Awesome. Tremendous. Oh, that's great. Good for her. We should, we'll perhaps omit that from the minutes, but I know we all,
Thanks,
I know we're all feeling it. So Ellen Mar.
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick. Mary.
Aye.
Meg Wheeler.
Aye.
And Rob Hillman. Aye.
I was an aye.
And I. Oh,
No,
sorry,
no.
Patrick. I
Sorry.
got worked up about all the surprise party fun.
You want one, Rob?
Pardon me?
Do you want a surprise party?
No, thank you. I just had a very round birthday and I did not need that.
Yeah,
like I said,
it'd be nice to roll it back to 40, wouldn't it?
I'm at the age where I'm very grateful to have the fire chief, an emergency room physician, and an RN all within about 100 feet of where I'm sitting. So, let's see. I didn't anticipate any other topics. We covered upcoming meetings. Is there anything else in the housekeeping matter that anybody would? Okay, so we're off next week. Enjoy the evening off, and then I guess it's time for one more motion. Anybody?
I'll move to adjourn at 9:04.
I will second.
Excellent. Okay. By roll call again, Gina Stino.
Aye.
Mike Barclay.
Aye.
Fran Collins.
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy.
Aye.
Mark Maggi.
Aye.
Ellen Mar.
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick.
Aye.
Meg Wheeler.
Aye.
And Rob Hillman, aye to an aye. Thank you. Good evening. I'll see you in 2, and I think we'll, things look good for getting done without. Well, I'm not even going to curse ourselves by saying it.
And don't